All right, and we are going live in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hey, how's it going? This is Coach Terrence Wood with Before You Go Pro, and we hope all is well with you guys during this holiday season. It's Wednesday, you guys, so you know what time it is. It is Webinar Wednesday. We're ready to get after it. We only have a couple more of these left before we take a little holiday break, so that our team can get with their families, just like yourself. So we are very excited about today's webinar. We had a recruiting webinar last week, and today we have Miss Erika Westhoff, who is our mental skills trainer. So I know you guys do a lot of on the field work. I know you guys are doing footwork drills, and you're in the weight room, and you're with your speed coach. But if you're not working on this up here, if you're not in between the ears, you guys, there's going to be a chink in your armor somewhere. There's going to be a misstep. And that is why we have Miss Erika Westhoff, and she has tremendous content. I know some of the content in tonight's webinar, and it's going to hit a lot of you guys right where you need to be hit, right in the heart. So, Erika, thank you so much for being on tonight. How's it going?
It's going great. I'm always happy to be here and share a little something with the guys. So thanks for having me.
Well, we get so much great feedback about your presentation. So I'm going to get out the way and let you do your thing. And thank you once again.
All righty. Okay, so our topic today is, since the season is, for many of you, has wrapped up, for some of you is wrapping up here shortly, I wanted to take a look at a process that's incredibly important for your development as a player. During the season, there are inevitable ups and downs. I'm sure you can look back and think about some of the great moments you had on the field, and you can look back and think about some of those moments you wish wouldn't have happened. We all have them. We all have both, and that's just part of the process of being an athlete. But part of the learning process is to really thoroughly evaluate how you did. Many of us are very good at planning, but we aren't so good at following up and evaluating. So I wanted to offer you a process tonight to go through and really evaluate your performance this season. All right, and why would we do this? Why should we take the time to evaluate? Okay, and one is we want to build awareness about a lot of things, and a lot of the good things. I'll talk more about that in a minute. We really need to become very clear on the lessons that we learned this season, because what we don't want to do is have to re-experience things over and over again, or repeat mistakes over and over again. We want to get real clear on what we've learned so we can progress forward from there. This is also a process that really helps to prioritize your off-season training. And, you know, one of the unique things about football is a very short season, which means you have a very long off-season. And that off-season looks different for a lot of you guys, but you really need to prioritize. And we're going to talk about a process to do that, about how to look at your off-season so you are in the best shape you can be at the beginning of next season. One of the biggest challenges of evaluation is to be really honest. And not only honest with the things that didn't go the way you wanted it to, but to also be honest for the way, also be really honest for the success that you had. And I've learned over the years that athletes are not always great at identifying their successes, and really owning them, really being proud and being upfront about what they did really, really well. So you got to be honest on both sides of that. Okay. And then also the last thing is to get some feedback. One of the most meaningful exercises that I do when I work with teams is I have athletes evaluate themselves, and then we give the same evaluation to their coach, and I have their coach evaluate them. And it's always really interesting to see whether those things match up really well, or if they're really off, or how they line up. Okay, but I want you primarily to evaluate yourself and then also to eventually get feedback from your coaches. All right, so what do we evaluate? As I said a minute ago, we've got to look at what was successful during our season. And as I said, this for many athletes is a really challenging thing to do. There's a good reason for that. The reason being is that when things go wrong, it leaves a bigger imprint on our memory. So we tend to think about what we did wrong, when it went wrong. We might run it through our head visually. A whole lot of times, there's usually an emotional component to what happened. And it just leaves a much bigger memory. And oftentimes when things go right, when we play, we go through the play, we execute it exactly right, we just move on to the next thing. It's not emotional. It's not, it doesn't leave a big imprint. So we just move on. And so we have a tendency to not always pay attention to those things. And our successes are huge building blocks. Those are things we want to repeat. Those are things we want to be really clear on so that we can use it in our future. Okay. And I want you to look at big, and often it's the small successes that count a lot. Okay. It's great if you scored the touchdown, if you made the pass, if you caught the pass, all of these things. But really, for most of you, a lot of these successes that you need to acknowledge are little things. It might be learning how to work hard on days when you're exhausted. It might be how you were able to keep your teammate next to you focused and on track. It might be that you improved communication with your coach. It might be that you were able to execute some of the little technical things that you've been working on. Okay, so don't just think about the big successes. I want you to focus on the small ones too, because those count a lot. And then the next step is one that really starts to separate out the good from the great athletes, because this requires some thought on your part. Is not only should you look at what you were successful with, but why? What caused the success? Was it something you did in training that week? Is it the work you've been putting in the weight room? Is it the footwork that you've been working on for months and months? What caused the success? Again, this is a great indicator of things that you need to be doing on an ongoing basis to keep developing and to keep growing as an athlete. Next on your list of successes, so skill development. What skills did you really were you able to use in the game situation this year? Okay. For many athletes, and especially with the intensity of football, it's one thing if you can get it done in practice, and it's a whole nother level if you can get it done in a game. So I want you to really acknowledge some of those skills that you were able to execute successfully in the game. And another area is consistency. Consistency is the hardest thing of all. It's what we're all working towards. And I want you to identify areas where you were really consistent this year. What are some of the things, maybe when you look back to your previous year or your junior football career, the things that you really struggled? Sometimes you got it done, sometimes you didn't. But this year you were doing it consistently. Okay, those are really, really important clues to your development as a player. And then, of course, you need to look at the challenges that you've had in the season. So what were they? And again, these for a lot of athletes are much easier to identify. Okay, so what are the things that you know could have been better? Maybe the things that you didn't work on enough during practice. What were the things that that you wish you would have done? And then the next question is how did this, this lack of skill, this lack of development, lack of fitness, strength, whatever it may be, how did it impact your performance? And that's your personal performance. So how did it impact you in your position? And then answer the question again, how did it impact your team? So if you're not at your best in your personal position, your team is not at their best because you become a weak spot. Okay, so this again requires some thought. You need to slow down, you need to think about it. And then I want you to ask yourself, is it controllable? So what can happen sometimes when we think about the challenges of the season, we think about how a teammate wasn't doing his part. We think about how, maybe the offense wasn't doing their part, so the defense had to work way too hard. But I want you to think about challenges that were 100% in your control, because that's where you can have the most impact. That's where you can make the most change. So as you're looking at your list of challenges from the season, identify the ones that are in your control. And then I also want you to mark ones that you can really focus on in your off-season training. So whether it's a check mark or a little star or something on your list, maybe even a circle around those that you can focus on for off-season training. Okay, so now once you've taken the time to really look at those successes and really look at those challenges, make sure they're really controllable, I want you to start setting goals. The end of the season is always, always, always the best time to set goals for the next season, because you're clear. You're as clear as you're ever going to be about what happened this season. And again, in football, it's a long time till next season. Okay, so now is the time. Don't wait on this. This is urgent. So when we're working on goals, we often work backwards. Okay, so we start with the biggest goals first, the furthest ones out, and then we work backwards towards the more near future. So we start with goals for next season. So based on your evaluation of what you were really successful with and what you were really challenged by, make a list. What do you need to do to develop yourself as a player? Okay, so for you, are you finding from your evaluation that you need more strength, more fitness, more skill development? It's going to fall into one of those three categories, maybe even some leadership as well. Okay, but really identify what those are and where you want to be by the time next August rolls around. That's what we're looking at here. Then you can back that up just a little bit more and start to look at goals for spring training. So what is it based on where you want to be in August? What are the things that you really need to prioritize in spring training? Okay, so make a list of those. And again, it's really important that you don't just think about this stuff. Don't just leave it up here. You've got to get it down on paper or on your computer, or at the very least in the notes of your phone. You've got to get it down because it will disappear over time. All right, and then your third area of goals is what are you going to work on this winter? So for you, these are your more immediate goals. These are the things that might take longer to develop, or it might be things that you need to focus on when you have more time on your own to train. Okay, it gets tougher when spring training comes around. You don't have as much time on your own. What are the things that you need to focus on this winter? Okay, so this winter we're preparing for spring. Spring we're preparing for summer team practice to pick up again. Be really thoughtful with this. Okay, and then we're getting down to practical pieces here. So as you come up with your list of goals, you need to start thinking about who can you train with and who do you need to train with. Okay, some of you have more resources than others, but at the very least, do you have coaches that are available to work with you around, like through the different seasons? Do you have even one teammate who wants to train with you? Maybe he has similar goals, or maybe he's just someone who's willing to work as hard as you are. Can you train on your own? Learning how to train on your own and really push yourself by yourself when nobody else is there pushing you is a tremendous life skill. And then do you have access to private trainers or mentors or people that can help you out in the area that you need help with? Okay, and that's those people are around, and tapping into your community, tapping into your neighborhood, your school, is a great way to find where these people are if you don't know who they are already. All right, and then in terms of where to train, so you hopefully have some options here. So your school, you hopefully have access to the weight room year-round. the track, the football field, if, depends on if there's other sports out there or not. Are there other sports that you're playing? As a high school player, I know there's a lot of debate about whether you should play other sports. But the fact of the matter is, if you are a kid who needs to work on your speed and agility, maybe you need to join the track team in the spring and kind of double up on football, spring training, and track. There's ways to get that done. Some coaches encourage that. Some coaches you might need to communicate with a bit more. But your school and your coaches can be tremendous resources that you have. And then obviously, if you've got access to a gym or a private facility for more training, take full advantage of that, okay? But I want you to be thoughtful this time of year with your goals in place, how you're going to go about with that training during the off season. And last, but certainly not least, and I know you guys are here because you care about all of this stuff, and Terrence, Coach Wood is here to guide you through and give you access to a lot of great help in all of these areas. But think about your grades. Were your grades where they needed to be this season? Are your test scores? You probably have taken those of you who are sophomores and above, you've taken a PSAT now. Are your scores where they need to be? What kind of work do you need to do there? What are your resources? And mentoring, again, just like we talked about, a mentor for football, mentoring in the classroom, really, really important to get you the help that you need. And I know that's why you're here. So Coach Woods is a great resource for help you get what you need. All right. If you have more specific questions for me, if you want to learn more about mental training, this is my contact information. I believe we have an offer still available. If you are interested in chatting with me, I'm offering a free 20-minute coaching session. Just get in touch. If you click on that little schedule now button, that'll put you directly in touch with my website. And from there, we can chat and see if I can help you out.
Amazing job as always, Erika. I don't know if we can still hear you. Can you hear us?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. We lost your visual, but that's okay. I wanted to ask a couple questions because the content was so amazing. A couple of light bulb moments always happen when I'm listening to you present. And one of the things that you talked about was, what's the cause of your success? I think as athletes, so many times we think about what's the cause of our failures. Mm-hmm. We'll have a bad game and we'll think about why the game went wrong. But I don't think that athletes dial in as much on, okay, I had a great game, or I made a great play, or coach moved me up the depth chart. What was the cause of that success? So I thought that was big that you brought that up. Obviously, consistency is always huge. And I think that athletes grow more appreciation for consistent players, teammates, as they get older. Talk to me about this. Some of our athletes, we all of us go through certain seasons of life where maybe it seems like we're getting rained on a lot, like nothing's going right. Maybe there's a divorce in the home, or maybe there's just no resources or support in the home. Maybe there was a death in the family. How does a young man stop? My father used to call it the domino effect. How can somebody stop the domino effect of, okay, I have maybe this isolated incident where me and my parents aren't seeing eye to eye, but how do I stop that where it doesn't bleed into my academics, into my athletic career?
Yeah, really good question, because to your point, we all go through phases like that. And one of the many great things about sports, especially when we're young and growing and just developing the life skills that we need for later on in life, learning how to cope in those types of phases of our life is so, so important. And one of the things that athletes can do is start to set some boundaries about what they allow into certain areas of their life. For example, once they cross into a classroom, once they step onto the football field, or maybe even prior to that into the locker room, when they step into the weight room, is deciding, being very clear about what weights outside and what they bring in.
Okay.
And it's for some, even symbolism helps a little bit. So for example, writing those things down, I'm so angry at my parents or my friends or whatever the thing is, or I'm really upset about this, and literally just leaving that on a piece of paper outside, because it's going to be there when you get back. But when you do step into those areas, into the classroom, into the weight room, onto the field, that you're choosing for that short period of time to just focus on your task, just focus on lifting, just focus on football, just focus on your workout.
Okay.
Does that make
makes sense? Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And thanks for clarifying that for us. If you guys are just joining us, this is a webinar Wednesday. Ms. Erika Westhoff, our mental skills trainer, is on the line. She just got finished presenting, so you guys will get a recording. And please continue to share about Before You Go Pro and the content we provide young football players, parents, and coaches. I wanted to ask you one more question, Erika, before we let you go. And thank you once again for this amazing content. You mentioned athletes evaluating their season and evaluating the challenges within the season, which is something that obviously is highly recommended. But is there a fine line between labeling something as a challenge and then maybe labeling something as an excuse? And how can an athlete maybe differentiate between those two?
So really, really good point you brought up there. And where that line is it controllable? And that was one of the bullet points I put in there, is if you perceive that your challenge for the season was your teammate, or was your coach, or was your parents, or was something outside of you, it is not controllable.
Okay.
And therefore you can't fix it. What you have to fix then is your response to that, how you handle that, how you deal with that, how you learn to leave that on the side of the field, or you leave it, you reset in between plays to not let that bother you anymore. So again, those challenges that you can really have an impact on are the ones that are things that you can control 100% of the time.
Gotcha. And that's a good point, because so many times as athletes, we worry about the things that we have absolutely no control over. And many times I've obsessed over things that I just really didn't have any control over. So, we have to focus on what we can do. Well, hey, thank you so much once again. I know that the parents, the athletes, the coaches received tremendous value from this webinar. Once again, you guys, you will all be evaluated, whether it's by your coach, whether it's by a recruiter, whether it's by your dad. Everybody is going to be trying to evaluate you. You're going to have your own personal evaluations. And Erika gave us some wonderful advice on the best way to go about that. So, Erika, happy holidays, and thank you once again.
All right. Thank you.
All right. So, hey, you guys, that is it. And we'll have more mental skills training in the new year, but that is it for 2019. And I know you guys receive a lot of value from Erika's webinars. We'll have one more recruiting webinar, and then we'll have our 2020 season. We've got some great people that we want to expose to you guys. And once again, if you're new to Before You Go Pro, we are a student athlete development and recruiting company. So we work with athletes across the country, and we want to put the ball back in the hands of the athletes and the parents so you guys can win. So it's an even trade between football and yourself. So hopefully you guys got a lot out of tonight's webinar. That is the end, and we will definitely see you at the top.